Brynn Scarborough, welcome to the Future of Fitness. It's a pleasure to have you.
Thank you, Eric. So happy to be on. Happy to finally connect.
Yeah, we're uh we're gonna geek out a little bit. I'm excited. So you are the president and CEO of JK Products and Services, large kind of wellness technology. But you've been around, the company's been around for a minute, and you guys have been doing some stuff now, and the market is really starting to come towards you with the technologies and the products that you guys provide. And it's no secret to anybody who knows me. Like I love like wellness technologies. I love wearables. I love all of the things, like a little bit of a kind of a private biohacker. So, and I know you
Yeah.
are too.
Same.
Like I really want to hear about your own personal like wellness sanctuary, I think as you,
Yeah.
you said. So a lot to talk about today. I mean, the trends in wellness technology are trending up for sure. And as you and I are just
Mhm.
talking about, it's like, it's kind of overwhelming, really,
Yeah.
with the amount of variety of options that consumers have at all levels from, people who are willing to spend a lot of money to people who spend very little money or no money. So we're going to get into all of that. And I think it's really important for people to pay attention to this stuff because these trends can dictate whether you're a brick and mortar or a practitioner or an executive of a company or an investor. This is all really important stuff. So, Brynn, let's start with this. If you don't mind, just give us some of your background and then we'll take it from there.
Sure. Absolutely. Like you mentioned, I'm the president and CEO of JK Products. I've been with the company for 12 years now. I actually started as their development director when I came on a while ago, mainly because of an outsider's opinion, outsider's perspective, and kind of continue to bring that to the table. Been a health and fitness junkie for more than 2 decades. I love certifications, right? Anything that will give you a participation or a certification, I'm there for it. So I've been a spin instructor, boot camp instructor, have my 200-hour yoga certification, have tried every workout imaginable, right? It's just a part of a lifestyle of curiosity around this topic, I think. So definitely a practitioner, but also an investigator on that side as well. And yeah, latest and greatest, I started my doctorate about a year ago, diving into leadership resilience as well, encompassing these areas of things like mind, body, and spirit resilience, everything from wellness to community to ceremony, all of those things. So, yeah, it's very well aligned for me. And seems to be something rather pervasive, not only in my career, but personal life and academically as well.
Yeah, yeah, indeed. Pervasive. That's a good word. I like that one. Well, let's start with this. Tell us about your personal wellness sanctuary. Like
Yeah,
what are the things that you use?
Yeah. If you know me, you know I've been working on this for a little while. I haven't been quiet about it. But I've kind of built out in my garage gym in the back. I've kind of built out my own little oasis. Not fantastic for my social life, but great for my workouts because now I don't even see people in workout classes or the gym anymore, but I am working out on my own schedule, which has taken my workout frequency through the roof. But yeah, I'm a frequent weight trainer as I have aged as a woman into my late 30s. I realized that I can't just be the cardio queen anymore, right? I have to spend a lot more time weight training and resistance training, building muscle, keeping muscle over time, thinking about that health span over time as well. Yeah, and I have my own little circuit set up back there. So I personally am a lover of sauna and cold plunge, and then also red light, which is one of our specialties at JK as well. So working those modalities into my daily life and daily routine is pretty important for me and my mental health and my performance, all the things. So yeah, that's kind of what I do. I love to go to a yoga class every now and then or go to a HIIT class, but yeah, right now I'm on a 4-day-a-week cycle for lifting and, recovery now has become just as important as the output.
I love it. That makes me really happy to hear. And I want to circle back, later in this conversation about how you actually integrate each one of these within like a day. Cause like timing, frequency, all that stuff is really interesting to me as well. But, I want to make sure that we give due time to wellness technology trends.
Yeah.
And I was reading a recent post of yours on LinkedIn. I really recommend people go find you and follow. But let's start with this. Kind of when you need to talk about a thing, you need to define a thing, right? So when you
Mhm.
hear wellness technology, what how would you define that, for the sake of a conversation?
Well, that's an interesting question because we're throwing a lot at the conversation right now, whether that's AI, whether that's wearables, whether that's integrative healthcare and medicine or technology and automation. I would say where I take up most of my time from a career perspective in well tech is equipment and automation, making those services, automated services accessible through equipment. Now, I think inside of that conversation, it's important to be talking about AI as well. It's important to be talking about integration of technologies, right? As we're all fighting for timeshare and wallet share. I think those two things are becoming the true determinants of success in this space because, there's just so much competition for your wallet, but even more so, there's so much competition for your time and really making those things make sense together. So yeah, for me in the well tech space, it's really about, external technologies. I'm not necessarily always talking about technologies that learn you as an individual, though honestly, that's a part of every conversation that we're having at this point.
Yeah. And I think there's like the big ones right now, right? There's contrast therapy, there's
Yeah.
red light therapy. What are other some of the big ones that you're seeing? And basically, and what I'm just thinking about right now is when I walked the floor at Ursha this year,
Yeah.
wellness technologies are dominating. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, they're never compared to like the major equipment manufacturers at a show like that, but like it's shocking like how much it's grown over the last 3 to 4 years. So what are the major categories that you would define as wellness technology?
Yeah, I think it's definitely contrast. There's an interesting thing about cold plunge, and how do you know if somebody cold plunges? Because they're going to tell you like in the first
It's
5 minutes of
it's like
meeting them,
CrossFit.
right?
Yeah.
You're going to know that, and we're really annoying like
Yeah.
that. But it has this stickiness to it. And if you can come up with a better word than stickiness, I'd love to hear it. But it has this like loyalty creation factor to it that has made it really interesting and unique, right? These are not, this is, it's hard to even call this stuff technology, right? These are literally ancient applications of wellness, from hundreds and hundreds of years ago that we're just modernizing from an application perspective, hot and cold, both. But I think when you can do those two things together, it's got a lot of potential. I think obviously we're seeing a lot of advancements in massage, but not just, whether that's AI massage, whether that's dry water massage, sensory immersion, kind of going beyond sensory deprivation and float tanks, which we realized weren't really scalable. That was a really hard technology to scale. You weren't gonna put a second one in another room, and that just wasn't something that took off, but the sense depth piece of it kinda did remain, and so whether that's sensory immersion and, binaural beats and being able to trick the mind into down regulation, those types of things, and doing that incorporating massage as well, and then, obviously, you've seen a ton of red light. Red light is not new. It's really the consumer appetite and willingness to have the conversation around red light that's really come into the mainstream. And with that kind of comes the next steps after red light, which is infrared and PEMF and other things like that that are just now cusping. But I think over the years are going to be, next couple of years especially, are going to be just as important as the red light conversation because they're kind of the natural next steps from a visible or non-visible light perspective.
Yeah. I want to go through each one of those categorically and to kind of discuss a little bit more.
My
But
favorite things to talk about.
yeah, I know. Oh, me too. I love it. Uh, is there any emerging before we get to that? Is there any emerging technologies that you can tease us with? Anything that's coming out that maybe people, haven't heard a lot about yet?
Yeah, I mean, I think when we're talking about cold plunge, for example, everyone's trying to figure out how to do it without getting wet. You know, I I'm not here to judge which product is better than the other. Go look at the science, go look at the Hubermans of the world who, specialize in this stuff. But there's definitely a difference between a cryo environment and a cold plunge environment and what it does, for you from a health benefit perspective and from a mental health benefit perspective. So everybody from an operational perspective and a technology perspective is trying to figure out how to get the benefits of a cold plunge without putting in a wet room and without, dealing with a lot of things that can't be retrofitted in your regular gym space, right? Unless you're going to build out, replumb, do all of that. We're seeing some interesting entrants come into the space, kind of like these dry floats that are cold. I don't think we're quite there yet, but we're on the way and they're creating a lot of interest. You're seeing those at Ursa, you're seeing those at iSpa, places like that. From a sauna perspective, we're just seeing integration. We've gone from just dry sauna to infrared sauna. Now we're hitting full spectrum sauna. And I don't think the marketplace really knows yet what full spectrum means. We're just kind of
Mm.
throwing more technologies at it at the moment, kind of stacking more technologies. But I think you will see, if you're in the sauna for 20 minutes, I think you're going to continue to see people try to develop technologies where you're stacking habits while you're in there, whether that's better red light or better light or different types of energies beyond just heat that you can be sitting in at the same time. I think, the jury's still out. We need more information about what full spectrum really does by comparison. We know the difference between near and far. Don't know as much about mid, but still there's a lot to be said in that conversation. So yeah, in those two spaces, I would say that's kind of what's coming, in my opinion, and what's cusping. It's what I'm looking out for and where I've kind of tried to learn more over the last couple of months as well. If we could hack a way to give you that blast of happy hormones that you get after a cold plunge without having to, soak yourself in a tub and splash water everywhere, I think a lot of people would be happy from an operational perspective.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. I mean, one of the things I played with at the Ursa show was the like, how do you describe it? It's like a blanket of cold water therapy, right? So
Yeah.
you get in, it gives you exactly 3 minutes at like whatever it was, 38 degrees. It was really interesting. I mean, the price tag was hefty though. I think it was like retailed
Yeah,
at like 40 grand or something like that. So obviously not too many. Um, it's going to be more of a commercial application than anything.
definitely.
Um, so when we talk about contrast, I've had numerous people, and I mean, you could go to any Huberman and people are going to talk about the benefits of contrast therapy, especially cold plunges and, cold shock therapies, heat shock, or
Mhm.
I mean, sorry, you know what I mean? All the science behind it, the physiology of why it does. I've been a fan of, I don't have a cold plunge, but I do cold showers. I've been doing that for like 6 years, and it's
Yeah.
amazing. So a huge fan of everything that it does. But is there any like, what is the state you think of contrast therapies? Like, are we reaching like a point of like, okay, this is about as many people who are going to do it are going to have already done it, and or is it still growing? Like commercially, is it still growing? In the private, like where is it? Where is it
I
at?
I think it's still got some significant runway in front of it, mainly because sauna culture is not an American thing, right?
No.
You go to Europe or any other European country, there's this whole culture that's developed around the community of sauna, the experience of sauna. It's a half day affair that you go to with your buddies on the weekend. And we haven't gotten to that community space yet. And I mean, I was just reading some statistics the other day that I think sauna is now up to being 20% or so of sessions booked on ClassPass, which 5 years ago, it wasn't even on ClassPass, right? That's
Wow.
a huge no, don't quote me directly on that. You can find it on Google because it was Forbes or something like that. Might have even been Fit Insider. But it's had a massive uptick, but what I think is really gonna take sauna to the next level or revolutionize sauna is building the community aspect around it, and there's some really forward-thinking businesses on the coasts that are addressing this topic, right? Sauna in recovery is not just about sitting by yourself and booking a sauna session, it's about going into this community space and kind of creating, like, this experience around it. So I think it's got a lot of runway from that perspective. And I think there's still a lot of really creative business models that can be fashioned around not just the experience of contrast, but the experience of community, because it's like minded people in that space. It's people who are investing in their health and wellness. And everybody's trying to figure out a way to rebuild community post COVID, and we're not there yet. So you may not continue to see it, the way it looks today, but I think it's got a lot of runway to evolve because at the end of the day, there's a reason that cultures have developed around this around the world for hundreds of years. It's because it truly does improve your quality of life. So to me, it's not a trend, right? It's just a trend that more recently became popular in the US.
It's really interesting on how far behind we are in the US in kind of sauna culture. I have one of my neighbors has a Finnish background. He built his own sauna.
Mhm.
So he'll invite us over every once in a while. And it's a thing. It's a thing. Like you go
Yeah,
over, you plan on spending 2, 3 hours. There's snacks. They're gonna have a couple beers. Like you're just gonna it's just what you do. You hang
that's
out, you
right.
talk, and do multiple sessions, and it's awesome. And then I was talking to you pre-recording, did some recent travels through Central Asia and Istanbul, and I visited ancient bathhouses and modern
Yeah,
bathhouses because I figure that's something I really like to do now. So that sauna
yeah,
is just built in to the community. It's ancient. Like the
that's
one
right.
in Uzbekistan was like 400 years old. It was ridiculous. So we're just really far behind. But I think there's so much, and all these brands now are coming out. I know I get reached out to probably at least once or twice a month with some sort of franchise that's developing around sauna or something like that. So there, or even get the remedy places who are incorporating
Yes.
that. So there's a lot of room to grow, and a lot of people are still very, I'll say, naive to sauna and how good it is. So
Yeah.
that's interesting to hear. Uh,
I mean, and sauna is so well proven scientifically, probably
yeah.
from a scientific perspective, the most well proven modality on the list of all the things we're talking about. And Americans have this huge appetite and curiosity to try new technologies. But, this is not new. This has been around forever. And I think and what I'm always preaching about these technologies is lifestyle integration, right? If
Mhm.
you've got to go out of your way, out of your, you know, path, whatever, to do an appointment for just one thing, I don't think it's going to stick from a lifestyle perspective. The reason these things have hung around for thousands of years and communities have developed around them is because their lifestyle develops around this community of recovery and well-being and all of the things. And I think that's the piece that we've really got to consider. I think that's why gyms honestly are perfectly positioned to really build out these wellness and recovery spaces because it's just an integration that makes sense because they're fighting for the time of their clients at the end of the day. But yeah, I think it's definitely something to consider when we're thinking about a business model perspective.
Uh, Tell me about red light. And I mean, I just started doing a little bit of work with red light. Mainly, I started in the fall because as the winters come here, I'm up
Mhm.
north. It gets kind of dark and dreary, and I feel like I need to kind of keep some light going. So I just got a red light panel, and I use it every morning now. But I done some science on it. I had Forrest Smith from Kenyon on here. He really dove deep into that stuff. People want to go back a few episodes and listen to like the deep science of everything around
Yeah.
red light therapies and all the stuff that you mentioned earlier about all the very formations, and they use it a lot for injury recovery, even gut issues is really
Mhm.
interesting. So give us some insights on like maybe the history of red light therapies, specifically to our market and, how it's starting to grow. I mean, obviously it seems to have a lot of early traction in aesthetics,
Yeah.
but there's so much more. So what's your take on red light? What can you tell us about it?
Well, red light is probably one of my top 2 favorite technology applications other than my Garmin, that I
Mm,
absolutely can't live without, right? It's like, choose 2, everything else you've gotta let go of. I was thinking it's gonna be my Garmin and red light. Mainly because, at the end of the day and I'll let the doctor speak to the in-depth science of red light, but red light at the end of the day increases ATP, right? It fuels the cell more efficiently and creates better cellular turnover and cell energy. Well, the output of that, the end effects of that are numerous, especially if you're using high quality red light. It also sits adjacent on the visible light spectrum. You have sunlight and then you go directly into red light, then you go into infrared on the visible light spectrum. So you do get some of the benefits of sun from red light, meaning the neurological benefits that might help you with SAD, seasonal affective disorder, or things like that. So you are right, it can help with those things. But what I really notice from a skincare perspective, the skin is kind of slow to respond, right? It's the biggest organ in the body, but at the end of the day, it takes a little while to respond. So sometimes you don't get that immediate gratification from a skincare perspective because you need 60 to 90 days, using high quality red light for your skin to respond to it. No different than skincare, right? If your
mm,
esthetician sends you home with new products, she's going to have you come back in 90 days, no less, because you're not going to see an effect before then. But what I really notice, when working hard in the gym, and believe it or not, as I'm getting older, staving off soreness and injury and all of those things that might take me down for tomorrow's workout, red light really, really helps with all of that. And we're finally seeing some technologies come to market We were one of the first companies that came out with a total body red light unit almost 15 years ago. No one was ready for the conversation. Nobody knew how to talk about it. And now we can't get people to stop talking about it, right? We really only have to put a good product on the market and because people understand the rest. And so now with the evolution of LED and being able to add near infrared to that, it's truly been a fascinating next step, right? The combination of near infrared and red light together really kind of supercharge the experience. There's some awesome research out there about what near infrared does for mental health and for energy and those types of things. So it just enhances what red light already does. So yeah, you'll see the most immediate effect on like acute muscle soreness, workout recovery, joint soreness. Like if you're a runner or doing, some sort of really high intensity situation, you'll see immediate results. If you're in good red light, you'll see immediate results from that perspective. And then over time, I've been realizing as I've been using our lay down unit, which is a fairly new unit, that the combination of the infrared, I get almost the same kind of mood boost and high that I get from a cold plunge, but it's more
Huh.
sustained and the focus is better. It absolutely improves focus. Like I usually always try to red light in the morning, not in the late afternoon, just because it energizes you. Right? It's not like it's gonna really disrupt sleep, but obviously better if I want that energy in the morning. And yeah, I notice my focus is better. I notice my mood is better, energy levels are better, and I can't point to anything else but the inclusion of that on a regular basis. And I can certainly tell a difference the days I use it versus the days I don't.
Interesting. And there's a lot of different ways. I mean, there's the face masks, there's the panels. I mean, two ways. Like optimally, right? What's the best way to get red light? And then for people, like realistically, for most consumers out there, what do you think are some of the best options to do red light there?
Yeah, so there's a lot of options out there. The space has gotten crowded. Unfortunately, the space is not crowded with quality products. There's a couple of things
Mm.
that you want to consider. You want to consider actual light output. So making sure that you are in that true red light nanometer range where you should be. Any company that's creating legitimate um, devices should be publishing their measurements, right? And just being very transparent about those things. The other thing is duration, efficacy, and proximity. So, proximity to the body, making sure that there is nothing between you and that high quality red light that's going to block light transmission. Like sometimes, and I've had every mask and I've had every one, I've got them all upstairs. I am a participator in the sport. Like some you'll notice, right? And I won't mention any brand specifically, have like really sick plastic between you and the LEDs. Well, that's not going to work. That's going to take down the light transmission of the LEDs significantly from an efficacy perspective. So, if you do have something between you and the LEDs, you want verified measurements on the body level, which again, legit manufacturers should be giving you. You also want efficacy from a time perspective. So about 20 minutes at least 3 times a week. Obviously, best case scenario is total body exposure, making sure that, vital organs are exposed as well. But that doesn't mean that, a high quality facial panel isn't going to give you some neurological benefits of, helping improve SAD, helping improve focus, those types of things. Where it gets a little fringy for me is when we're talking about kind of like, red light in, I'll even say saunas or things like that, where you're far, far away from the light. You've got one little color panel on the ceiling. You're far away from that. You might have some visual effects just from a phototherapy perspective or color therapy perspective, but biologically, your body really can't receive any of that. Anything that you're feeling in that environment is going to be coming from infrared, not from red light. So just being discerning, right? Asking for measurements, learn, there's so much good information out there about red light and just the light ranges and what they do. Learn what those are and make sure that you're getting the output that you expect.
Yeah, I think for most people, like, and it's kind of the point of this whole conversation is like it's just overwhelming. Like, okay, if I want to have something at home, like it's interesting to hear you say, like, okay, the things that are non-negotiable for you are your Garmin, right, and your red light therapy.
Yeah,
I presume exercise and nutrition are obviously the foundational pieces of
sure.
that.
I feel like I can
Um,
do that without technology, but generally without technology. But yeah.
So I guess the point for most people is like, well, gosh, do I have the room or the budget to do these kind of things in my home, right? If I want a full body, I presume a full body is like a lay down, you know, rather space consuming unit. Is there things that now, as from a consumer point of view, that you can start to do with like, smaller footprint? Like, what would you recommend for most consumers as far as a product to get the most benefit from the least amount of space consumption and monetary investment?
Yeah, I would say, from a consumer perspective, I would say a couple of things. There are high quality panels out there. I can't really speak to the total body panels, but for example, we also partner with Saluma and make a lounge that has panels on it. Those panels can be bought individually for home use. I had one started using it 7 years ago, right? Those are really high quality output home devices as well. It's hard to compare what you're going to get from a facial device versus total body exposure, right? It's like, do you want the gut brain exposed or the mind brain exposed? You can do that with a panel too. And I think from a business perspective, it's really focusing on these things that are unique and high quality technologies that people are going to come to you for. We see a lot of people, let's say in the gym space, they're like, oh, I'm just going to put a panel up on the wall. Cool. Awesome. I get that you're on board with the technology, but at the end of the day, people are going to know the difference. They're going to know when they walk away and they're like, I don't think anything happened in there versus the true difference between high quality and red light and near infrared exposure. You will know the difference. Not everybody's going to get to use both and know what both feel like. But if you ever do get to use high quality red light, you will absolutely know the difference. So from a home perspective, I think it's more, neurological as well. But for the biological effects, it's kind of really seeking out, the higher quality equipment and things like that. And it will become more pervasive over time as more people become educated about it as well. And it comes down to consumer demand.
Yeah, yeah, super interesting. And the one that I don't know a whole lot about. I've done it, and I'm curious the state of it. But you mentioned earlier was sensory deprivation. Like that seems to be evolving because not everybody can, or most places don't want to put a huge like salt tank,
Yeah.
right, with the full deprivation, which is really cool, by the way. I've done
Yes.
it a handful of times and it's super interesting. I don't feel like I come out of it like having, the immediate benefit of, a cold plunge, which is undeniable. It's like you are physiologically different three
Yes.
minutes later. So maybe give us some an update. Like how is the technology and science and product lines of sensory deprivation come along?
I kind of look at that channel or that bucket of products from a sensory deprivation perspective or sensory immersion. They do the same thing. What's the goal of that product bucket? It's to downregulate the central nervous system. Red light doesn't necessarily downregulate. It will help you relax. Most of the time I fall asleep in a session. Sauna is kind of an upregulator at the end of the day. Cold plunge is definitely an upregulator. But what we know post COVID is that everyone is looking to the fitness and wellness industries to say, how do I bring this back to baseline? Everybody is stressed out. Everybody is, their baseline stress is much higher than it was 5 years ago. We know that. And so we as an industry have been completely unprepared to answer this question, right? We've been in the no pain, no gain business for so long that now when people are coming to us saying, I want to recover, I want balance, I want, to down regulate in this space, we're offering them a foam roller and a massage gun. And this is not what people are looking for at the end of the day. So this whole area of products, and I include, some areas of massage in this as well, where when you can integrate services, whether it's sensory deprivation or it's sensory immersion, right? I'll use our well system for an example. The base service is a massage, but once we add, relaxation soundtracks, aromatherapy, and light therapy, you've got about 2-3 minutes that your brain can remember whatever it was that you came in stressed out about because we're kind of hitting all senses with a relaxation and down regulation opportunity. People routinely fall asleep within 3 to 4 minutes, and come out of it kind of like, oh wow. And I think that's probably similar to what you get from a sense step perspective. You're not coming out of there like, yes, let's conquer the world. You kind of come out of it like your brain's had a shower and you
Mm.
just feel, a little blank, which is great. we're all looking for that kind of headspace where things are not chirping so often and maybe there's some creativity or some rest in there. So that product category for me is developing, but I think it's the furthest behind from a conversation perspective, honestly, in health and wellness. I think in the spa environment, they're really catching up to how they can integrate technologies to help downregulate more quickly, where you don't need a therapist and you don't need a technician and you can kind of absolve yourself of some OpEx. But fitness and wellness, especially traditional fitness, has been way behind that conversation. And that's where we've really got to catch up, in my opinion.
Yeah, awesome. Uh, Give us some insights, if you can, into the commercial landscape of these technologies. I know you do a lot of that work. I mean, I guess one of the big questions that I've had reoccurring and on this show in my mind is like you see all these little boutiques popping up that are very specific to wellness, recovery,
Yeah,
sauna type things. And then you're seeing the health clubs that are now starting to adopt. I don't I don't know if there's a market for both. I'm not fully
that's right.
convinced yet. I mean, we'll see. But what are you seeing as a major trend from the commercial side? Like who do you think is gaining traction there? I mean, I feel like once the health clubs fully adopt and they start incorporating these things, it's going to be a hard thing to compete with. So, what give us the state of it, and then what are your opinion? How do you think this is going to shake out over the next 5 years?
Yeah, I mean, interestingly enough, there was no brick and mortar wellness industry 5 years ago, right?
Yeah,
We're still trying
crazy.
to figure out what to call it and how to classify it because these businesses didn't exist in this way, right? So it's brand new. We're going to see a ton of attrition. I see it kind of in three major channels. I see HVLP, I see boutique, and then I see, brick and mortar wellness, like the restores and the things like that. So everybody's looking at HVLP saying this is the natural place for recovery to take place. You've got the square footage, you've probably already got some sort of recovery space built out. It's just either not being well utilized or it hasn't really been strategically put together. And that I believe is where the conversation is going for HVLP over the next few years is how do you really because they're fighting for the time. If you're HVLP, you may not be fighting for the wallet share, but you're fighting for those appointments where someone's going across the street to do cryo or sauna or whatever and not coming into your four walls anymore because all you've got is workout or what you have from a recovery perspective isn't high quality enough or isn't interesting enough, to command that appointment time. So it really does put you ahead of the pack if you're doing it well, in my opinion. And for HVLP, those things need to be low OpEx investments. They need to be amenities that stack well together, that customers can move from one amenity to the other on generally on their own, and can be pretty self-explanatory. And so, they even some of the things that you see in these HVLP places, I'm thinking, you know, they're cool, but nobody's using it because either they haven't been introduced to it or it doesn't make enough sense for them to go from service to service. So in that lane, I think that's what's most important. In boutique, we all know that boutique classes, and I'm a boutique class girly. I love it. I love going to different types of classes, but there's a loyalty issue. And there's a revenue issue when it comes to how do you make money when a class isn't actively running?
Yeah.
Because the square footage is not making money. The only time they're making money is 45 minutes at a time, when somebody's actually in class. And it's rare unless you're in a major metropolis that you can stack classes from 6 a.m. to 8 p.m. every day and capitalize on your revenue opportunity. So it's thinking about really smart, high quality amenities that can be brought into that space that is an add-on and that can help you generate revenue between class times. And I think boutique fitness, honestly, is way behind on this conversation, right? But now that they're realizing that they've got so much competition, people are sampling, which is awesome because the appetite for wellness and fitness is way up, but loyalty is down. And so, you're carrying these various different services that let you sample from classes all over town, but the one that gives you sauna and cold plunge on top of it, or the one that gives you good recovery benefits on top of it, is the one that you might actually sign up to and become a member and stay loyal to. So for boutique, I think it's that. And then, for spa and wellness, it's really putting together services that make sense and are strategic. We are seeing a mixture of medical aesthetics and wellness technologies and biohacking and nutrition and holistic medicine all trying to come together in the same four walls. And, that's a lot. Think about the front desk person that has to introduce all of those services and the level of expertise that one person has to have to make it make sense. I think we're going to see a better strategy come out of that space over time and a better kind of a stacking amenity perspective that helps that make sense. We come out of the tanning salon space, so we know how to run businesses, 30 Brynn businesses with 2 or 3 employees pretty successfully. And at the end of the day, that's what a lot of these brick and mortar wellness locations are trying to do. They're trying to run and maximize their room by room capacity without having to have an employee in every room. So that's going to be a learning process over time. Sorry, that may be more detailed in what you were after, but I
That was
really do
awesome.
think it's kind of lane specific.
No, that was awesome. That was a great viewpoint and insights into what's going on. And I did a tour of Pod Studio when I was in LA a few months ago, and a beautiful place. Kudos to that whole team. And the same thing, it really looked like they're trying to like, how do we do this with 2 employees at once, right?
Yeah.
And there's so many different operational aspects, and the cleanliness of everything needs to be up to date. But it was beautiful. And like I could hang out there for days. But the question to me is, even someone who's super into health and wellness, it's like, how many memberships do I want to have? Right? Do I want to have,
Exactly.
and that's the key thing is like at what point, I mean, there's a certain percentage of consumers out there who will pay for both. Undoubtedly. Right.
Yeah.
And maybe that's enough. And I think that's the argument is like that enough to sustain all these different modalities. And even one here locally is a boutique. It's kind of like a high intensity boutique.
Mhm.
And they just opened their wellness studio that has, it's basically contrast therapy and red light therapies.
Mhm.
So I'm going to test it out. It's like $20, $25 a visit that you can go in. So I'm like, okay. But
Yeah.
then, of course, the big guy across the street, our major one, which has like 10,000 members, they're going to be expanding that soon. So who's going to win that? I guess we'll just kind of wait and see. But I have
Yeah.
my
It's
hunches.
interesting, think about how much the science has changed in the traditional workout space just since COVID, right? We were all
Hmm.
hit was the way to go 5 years ago. Now we've moved on from hit, we're back to weight training. We're kinda like
Yeah.
back to the basics in a lot of ways, which has been a really
Yeah.
interesting evolution to watch over the last few years, and I was there for it for the whole ride, right? And will continue to be, I'll try it all. But yeah, it's interesting, now it seems like I like to say recovery is the new retention in a big box, and I think it's recovery and free weights is the new retention in a big box because 'cause you've gotta give people something that they can't get somewhere else, and the services have to be good enough that it's not easy to replicate at home. They're not gonna have the major lift stations and all the dumbbells and all the heavy weights that I don't mess with. They're not putting all that stuff in at home. People don't have room for it. It's not realistic. So it's interesting, that sometimes it's back to the basics and other times it's, integration of higher level technologies. And we're doing both right now at the end of
Yeah.
the day.
Yeah. It's pretty cool. I had a kind of off topic, but interesting as well. I had a conversation with Jim Donnelly from the original guy from Restore.
Mhm.
And he's starting his new thing, which we're going to have on the podcast soon enough, the Humana. And it's all very high end longevity. Like we're talking like, all of the cool science, right?
Mhm.
Hormone replacement therapies, optimization to stem cell injections to all of that. And like, to me, that's going to be the separator of everything. Like that's something people will pay for and a health club and other stuff. So it's going to be interesting to see how all of that, it's super exciting time. I mean, it
Yeah,
really
it
is.
is. Well, and, Lifetime and Equinox are testing this theory of the
Oh yeah.
holistic medicine, Moira and others, and that's definitely on the super high end scale. But one thing that I think has always been so interesting about Equinox and others is the community that they create around their gym spaces, right? And Equinox is not sustainable in every market for sure. But at the end of the day, right? People who are loyal to Equinox, they go spend half a day there, just like sauna culture, right? Just like
Yeah.
you would do for a full day in the sauna in another country. They're going to a class, then they're in the smoothie bar, then they're going to take a cold, they're going to get ready there, right? It's a half a day ordeal. And I think it's interesting, it's not necessarily all the same amenities or offerings, but that's interesting from a business model perspective, right? How many times do I have to change clothes while I'm here? How many times do I have to reset to be able to gain the value that you're offering me from services? Like, you got to make it easy for me. And especially for all the people who are working remotely, like, give me a quiet space to take a call. so that I can take this call between my workout and my recovery and I can stay and do that, right? That's just where we're at as a workforce right now. And so I think it's thinking out of the box a lot too, which the fitness space is really trying, but this wellness brick and mortar space is challenging traditional fitness to think beyond the borders of kind of their own imagination.
Yeah, awesome. Brynn, give us some insights into GK's company. Like, what are you guys? Give us the broad range of what you guys are doing, who you work with. I'm curious about what the top sellers are right now in your product lines. Like, yeah, give us inputs on what you do.
Yeah, absolutely. So like you were right, we have been around for over 30 years here in the US. We've got a distribution base in Arkansas. We are in warehouses in New York and also California. We're about 60-40 remote. 40% of us are spread out all over the country, myself included. And then we've got, the home team that's running distribution and ops there in Arkansas. And we have really, in the last 3 or 4 years, transitioned heavily into this wellness technology space. Being in UV tanning for so long, good, bad, or indifferent, makes us experts in light application. And we
Hmm.
really know how to effectively apply light to humans and to do that in a way we've, been at the forefront of innovation for decades, really not only improving the efficacy, but also the efficiency of various different types of light spectrums. So that's really where we're at. And over the last few years, we've really expanded our wellness and technology portfolio, doing that with the well system. So dry water massage, but also sensory immersion as well. So that's definitely a top seller for us, working with some really awesome players, major players in the massage space that I'd love to tell you about in a few months as well. But then, in the fitness space, we're kind of in all the major big boxes, right? Whether that's Planet Fitness, Workout Anytime, Retro Fitness, those guys all across the country. We're really good at supporting businesses who are ready to scale or who have multiple locations. We are well equipped to do that. And then honestly, we just came out with this red light laydown unit, the Revive Pro IR in December, and it is taking off with a vengeance. The conversation is primed and ready. People are ready to talk about it. They're ready to kind of start understanding. And so, yeah, those are spaces that we're really moving, fast and furiously into.
Awesome. Awesome. And I promised at the beginning of this interview, would circle back to this, but your wellness routine, run us through like an average day or week or whatever an adequate unit of time would be to kind of cover the fundamentals of what you do. Yeah. Tell us about
In a
Brynn's routine.
perfect world, and now I'm like you, I travel a lot. So there's a lot of weeks that don't look like the perfect world. But in a perfect world, I am lifting 4 days a week, push, pull, legs, and then, you know, glutes and whatever one day. I don't think I can say what I actually call it here on this podcast, but
You can.
and then I try to do, one day of kind of full recovery and then one day of truly high intensity anaerobic cardio. Thank you, Outlive, for making me feel like I wasn't doing enough of that. I'm like, oh, I need to be pushing harder on that treadmill. So that's kind of what the workout regime looks like or regimen. I need to mix up my cardio, everything from assault bike to treadmill to erg to rower. I get bored quickly. So I have to move that around, move body parts around. And then I try to alternate days when it comes to recovery. So, meaning do red light one day and then sauna cold plunge on alternate days. Sauna cold plunge is easier to do at various different times of the day, in my opinion. I usually try to red light in the morning. All of those things can be done together. It just comes down to time at the end of the day,
Hmm.
right? If I could spend half my day recovering and in my lair, I would, but that's not really realistic. So yeah, I try to be in the red light at least 3 times a week, usually in the morning before breakfast, like right after I've had my coffee. And then try to be in sauna cold plunge at least 2 to 3 times a week. And if I'm doing that in the evening, which I usually am, I'm going to end on hot. I'm going to start in hot, cold plunge, and end on hot from a sleep perspective. If I'm doing cold plunge before 2 o'clock in the afternoon, I'm going to end on cold. Yeah, that's a perfect week, right? That's what things look like when everything's running the way it should. And I'm always looking for adaptations while traveling and whatnot to make those things happen. But that's where I'm at the moment. And more complexity than that, I can't really manage. And I'm lucky
Yeah.
to be able to get to do all that I do.
Yeah. Those are solid fundamentals. And Yeah, that's awesome. Last question I always ask, Brynn, is, as an industry, what can we help you with? What would you like to hear from people about when they listen to this? And then how would you want them to get in touch with you?
Yeah, I would say, honestly, just getting the word out. People have known us as Ergoline or as our tanning brands for a long time. And so they're getting to know us all over again for our wellness technologies and, our red light therapies and dry water massage and even new stuff coming out, in the next couple of years. So it's kind of a new introduction to a lot of conversations and a lot of people. And so, that's really our trajectory at this point is reinvigorating the conversation or having conversations for the first time with operators, now that we're in so much more of a diversified space. So that's what our priorities are. People can always get in touch with us through our website at jkproducts.us. You'll see Wellness JK there, you'll see Ergoline, you'll see all of the support departments that we have, those types of things. And I think that's where you'll continue to see us, moving forward from an industry perspective is, showing you how you can stack these things together in a way that makes sense on it's not 100% hands off, but on mostly a hands off situation with low operating costs. Then, a lot of the stuff really tends to pay for itself rather quickly once you get it running, which is exciting, right? It's not ROI that takes 5, 6, 7 years. Usually it's a year or less if you've got your memberships organized correctly. So yeah, an interesting time for us, but that's what we're working on. That's where you can find us, and that's the space that we're in.
Awesome. Brynn, this has been a lot of fun. This is type of stuff I think you and I could probably talk about for hours upon
Yeah,
hours.
for
'Cause
sure.
we really didn't even get too granular on some of these things, but super interesting. Really appreciate you coming on, and I'm happy for you guys that you really found a sweet spot in the market, and seems to be going really well. So, thank you for coming on, ladies and gentlemen. Brynn Scarborough.
Thank you so much.